Come in to me, show us the way. I'm caught between the wind and parts of the unknown. Adored between two worlds, a sight to see. It feels like everything is moving around me.
All right, I'm sitting here with one half of Shedworks, Daniel Fineberg and Martin KVALE, which is who are two of a very small team that's behind Sable. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So what are you doing in Norway?
I'm on holiday. This is my break after Sable's just come out.
All right.
Martin's helping me to relax, taking me to the sauna.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, a game like Sable, it feels like sort of like releasing a baby into the world. A very personal project that you've been working on for many years. What's it been like these past couple of weeks after the release?
It's been pretty good. It's been such a long time. Yeah, but for with a game like this, because the real draw for the players is the mystery and kind of discovering things, secrets, that kind of thing. But for us, there aren't any secrets, and so when we've been working on this thing for ages, and we didn't really know if it was going to be exciting or if there was enough to do or that kind of thing. So to finally see people actually like get it and really get what you were going for and stuff, people really connecting with it, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think the night when the reviews started coming in, to kind of see the first few ones and that people generally liked it was just a lot of weight felt like it dropped off my shoulders. Yeah, that was very a relief, as Daniel said. It's hard to know what people think.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you're taking some risks in the design here, and it's clear. It must have been clear for you as well that not everybody were gonna get it. Are you comfortable with that? That some connect more with it than others?
Yeah, definitely. We knew that from the very beginning. That's why we made it. Really, we wanted to make the game that we wanted to play the most. That we felt like it was a game that didn't really exist. We'd really enjoyed playing Breath of the Wild and games like that were sort of giving the player freedom. But yeah, we knew that we wanted something that was. We wanted to build a world, and we just thought that, okay, if we make the world interesting and real and make it feel like a place where real people live, there will be enough. That's what we wanted to see, and I feel like we made the game that we wanted to make, and we really did achieve that. When I think about how we talked when we first started the game and how we talked about our vision for it. When I look at what we made now, it feels like we actually did it. So I feel pretty good about that. And then if the people that wanted that and the people that like that, that's great. And then for the people where that wasn't their kind of thing, that's okay too. We knew that was always going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Now the company is called Shedworks, and I've read that it's because the company started in a shed in a garden. I'm picturing, like the cliche, you have to be in a garage or a shed or something to be truly indie. And I'm picturing like something run down with barrels and lawnmowers and everything. Could you describe what this shed actually looks like?
So it's quite a nice shed. It's in Greg's parents' house in their garden, and Greg's dad is an architect, so they did a good job making it into a proper office, but it is very small. It was maybe like
three people could sit there probably.
Yeah, it's probably like 2 meters by 4 meters maybe. So it's pretty small. We had Wi-Fi and stuff.
You had like a heat pump as
well.
we
had air conditioning and heater and stuff. It would get really, really hot in the summer. Because it's a very small space and we had all of our computers chugging away. But But yeah, it was a pretty. It was nice. There were a lot of spiders, but that's okay.
So you didn't have to burn the place down when you found spiders?
No. It's the spiders are good because they keep out all the other insects.
Yeah.
They just clean it up for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was nice, and yeah, we were in there until 2019. So we were working in the shed for the first 2 years of Sable, and we only moved out when we expanded the team a little bit, and so we hired one more person. So then there were 3 people in the shed, and that was really cramped.
Yeah.
And then when we needed to hire another person, we had to move. But Martin came over, and you saw the shed a couple of times.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, and I said garden, nice build quality. Coffee machine in the kitchen if you cross the garden, and a nice kind of office dog called Pip.
Oh yeah,
He's
the CEO.
Yeah, sounds nice. So you're not in the shed anymore, I guess.
Yeah, no, we moved out 2019.
Yeah.
So we have an office space now, but obviously pandemic.
Yeah,
we've just been working from home really. But we're in the office again now, so we're back in.
Yeah.
Back in the office.
Now, Shedworks is a small team, but you did take on help from Martin, which I've seen you've been called Martin Lawrence?
Martin Wallace. Martin Kvale.
Yeah.
Martin, I think Koala would be the funniest, but Wallace was the best one.
Yeah.
Kind of vaguely Scottish.
Yeah,
that fits
yeah.
with the Shedworks though.
And you've been working with the Japanese breakfast quite a bit to create the sound for this game.
Yeah.
How did you run into Martin, and what do you think of his work?
How did we run into Martin? I think so because we signed our publishing deal with Raw Fury in 2017, and you were already working on
Bad North, on Gunner or
Martin has worked on like
everything.
5 or 6 Raw Fury games. So
yeah,
I think we found you through there.
Yeah, I think it was Callum who talked me about you, and then we had a chat about it on Skype or something, or whatever we did use. And we talked about, I don't quite remember how, but you talked about Sable for a while, and I just really, it was a nice chat, and the GIFs looked really, really good, and like I was very excited after that chat. I remember.
That was before we spoke to Michelle, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You were talking about like you didn't quite know which musician you wanted, but you had some people in your mind. And I think it was Daniel who actually had the Japanese breakfast. Kind of found.
Yeah. So so her second album came out in 2017, and that was like my favorite album of that year, and I was listening to it a lot, and we just thought she'd be a really good fit, and I sent her a message on Twitter. I sent her a DM, just saying, "Hey, we're making this thing."
Yeah.
And she thought it looked really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then she came to London because she was playing a show in London. So, we just went to the pub when she was in London, and we talked about what we wanted to do, and we got on really well. And then,
what was the brief like? I mean, what did you tell Martin and Japanese breakfast to create?
I think it was pretty similar to, like, they have had a consistent vision the whole time. So I think basically what you told me is kind of what the game ended up being. Is what I remember getting the feeling of. Just absolutely no violence, a world that should feel inhabited with, and deserts and dunes. I feel like that's kind of was just how you pitched the game, really. And yeah. Also, we knew from the very start that we wanted to focus on Sable as a character. We wanted her to have her own personality, and we wanted the story to be about her growth as a person. It was really important to us that she wasn't a silent protagonist, that she has opinions and thoughts and stuff. So yeah, from the start it was always just, this is the character, and we want her to be exploring this world.
And also this is like one big persistent world where the visuals and the sound changes when you get into new areas. How did you work on that, Martin?
It was actually a lot of work together with Greg and Daniel and Michelle. We did play, especially me and Michelle did like do a few bouts of just playing for a while, discussing kind of what kind of vibes is needed, and we did that together with Daniel and Greg, and it was kind of just by trying and checking out things and listening and feedback and back and forth. It was a very collaborative process, and also, I mean, everything kind of had to go through Daniel at some point because it had to be implemented in some fashion or way. So I could decide where we make the audio bits, but then the hooks would have to kind of be hooked up into the game, and that was Daniel. And so the process was basically like, we try things. Michelle writes a few songs. I drive around in the new biome, or like to look at the new place, and then we kind of make some ambiences. We talk to Yannis about like where to put triggers of what to place where and how it should feel, and then it's iteration. It was pretty much up until the last week, I think, was just still doing things. But then at some point, you know, it's kind of like, oh, goodbye wind tower, good luck, good luck out there.
Yeah.
Because it's just a very big world. So it was very weird to slowly you kind of move over and you experiment and you build this thing, and you come back a year later and you kind of continue where you left off.
Yeah.
But it was cool because it is so big. It was also always surprising to kind of see that some work had been done here and there that was very inspiring, or suddenly there was like something that reacted to the wind, or like a cool new structure beneath like a cartographer's balloon, right? So I think it was just generally very pleasant to work on.
Yeah, that definitely happened to me. I would not touch a level for maybe 6 months or something, and then you boot it up to go and fix something or add a feature, and then suddenly Martin's done a load of work on this and it sounds real, and it suddenly has a totally different vibe to how I remembered it, and it's being constantly surprised throughout development as other people were just getting their stuff in and hooking stuff up.
It must have been satisfying to see the world like evolving and being realized in real time.
Yeah, I mean, it happens so slowly that you almost don't see it when you're working on it, because you're just doing one little bit every day. It's kind of like watching your children grow up or something. You don't really notice it because you're there every day. But
there were some moments though, like for instance when we did the first teaser with Glider, the song. That was me for a moment. For like, I think we tried putting the song on some temp stuff for the trailer, and it just felt evocative, and just like, for me that became Sable. Like that song is like the essence of the feeling of being in Sable, and when that song comes into the game, I feel like that just made this game this huge leap from this is the thing we're working on to like, this is like this dream and this thing we're working towards.
Yeah.
So for me that was always like, from then on, just this is the feeling we want. Like, this is the feeling I'm thinking of.
Come in to me, show us the way. I'm caught between the wind and parts of the unknown.
yeah, also just because we were working on it for 4 years, and for the first year and a half you're basically just building tools, so there isn't really anything to play. It doesn't feel like it didn't really feel like a video game for quite a long time. And I guess there was a moment where we'd probably just about made enough stuff that it felt real, but yeah, it kind of happens without you realizing.
Now, Martin, you've worked on a lot of games, and I've known you for many years now. I've never seen you this invested in social media. You've been really vocal about your love for Sable.
Yeah.
Is this your favorite game you worked on?
I think, I mean, all the games are favorites in some way, but I do feel like a very strong connection with the game and also with the team, and it's definitely been like, to be part of this whole thing has been like a very joyous thing, and I can kind of see it as something along with, for instance, like Among the Sleep or Manifold Garden, for instance, or Gunner. Like it means a lot to me to have been a part of it, but it's very specific because usually when I finish a project, which is maybe 4 projects a year or something, for the developers it's like an epic moment, and for me it's usually just like kind of like a Tuesday. Like Wednesday comes around and like I still gotta wake up and I'm a bit hangover, and now I have to log on and have another meeting with another team because it's starting up there. So for Sable, it's actually like marks this endpoint of me 2 years ago started to just say no to a lot of things. And together with Sable, there's like a few other games like Mungalo Bay that comes out now soon. And Townscaper, that is just, I'm kind of winding down in the number of games I am doing. So for Sable was very emotional because it kind of, it's the first time in a long time where releasing a game means the same for me as it does for you. Like fairly close, I think.
No, I remember in 2019, Martin released like 6 games or something in 2019. And that was definitely like, oh, okay, this one's out, but I've got to keep working because next week there's another one, and then the week after that there's another one.
It's definitely a little bit much. But so basically, Sable marks this kind of turning point where after Sable it's going to be very different. And me and Oda Tilseth and Alice Droni, we made this company almost 2 years ago called Knock Knock, which basically we're going to be there for each other to kind of also make life a bit more stable and healthy, I guess, for each other. And all of these things kind of came 2 years ago-ish, when it was that period of lots of games in short time, and it's not fun. And that is the risk of being like a lone wolf, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, Sable is special because it's like a definite end to something as well as it is for you. And I'm very happy about that. So I think that's also why I've been very, very happy about this Sable, is because it's what it means. It's also beyond the game, but with the game itself being also very special.
I connect with what you're saying because playing Sable is you get the sense that you're playing something beautiful. You're inviting something beautiful into your life, and I guess that feeling must be extra strong for you guys. I mean, creating something beautiful must be, a strong experience.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the same thing of, because you see it every day, it becomes kind of hard to see it. But I think each person on the team has something that they can really connect to, in the same way that players kind of find the thing that means a lot to them. Like, I can't really enjoy solving the puzzles or doing climbing, because if I'm doing the climbing, all I can think about is
camera movements.
Oh no, the camera's going to break, or oh, the animation is a bit jittery or something, and so But what I can enjoy is I can, even now after 4 years, I can just get on the bike and just drive around and listen to the music and the wind and the animals, the crickets. So I can just do that now and still enjoy myself and still relax. So I think we each have a part of it that we can kind of latch onto that keeps us going.
Now, famously, you've stated that you were inspired by Star Wars: The Force Awakens with Rey on Jakku, and the idea was, what if she never left Jakku and stayed there? I guess you could also say that Rey's search for who she really is mirrored in Rey's journey in the Star Wars movies. Now, if Disney came knocking, would you have considered pivoting Sable to be an actual Star Wars game?
Yeah, I don't know. There are some good Star Wars games. I feel like we could make a pretty cool Star Wars game.
I think so. It would be a bit of a shame to introduce lightsabers and violence, though.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
The thing is, we knew that we didn't want any combat in our game for sort of thematic reasons, for story reasons, but also it's loads of work.
Yeah.
A huge amount of work, loads of animations. You need to do the animations, you need enough different characters, you need to design lots of enemies, you need to set up all of the combat scenarios. You need to test it loads. It's just a huge amount of work, and even then, probably your combat's not going to be very good. It could be loads of work to make like kind of rubbish combat. And to make really good combat is just.
Could you go into a bit more detail about that, because it's not common to find like it looks like an action adventure game, and there's no conflict, there's no combat, there's no weapons, there's no shooting. What's the reasoning behind this?
Well, but we knew from the very, very start that the drive for the player was going to be exploration. and the world. Just the world is like a character. The world is the story. You know, the story is not very structured, and we knew that from the start as well. And so that was also a kind of a production consideration. If you make the story too detailed, or if the story is very controlled or more cinematic or something, you have to do it. You have to do the whole thing, and then if you run out of time or it's taking too long and you have to cut something, then you have to change the story to fit the pieces that you've cut out. And so we needed to make something that we could be very flexible. We didn't have to control where the player goes too much, and if we have to cut out a whole area of the map, it's totally fine. And so, yeah, combat was a thing that would just get in the way of that. It would mean that, okay, if the player can go anywhere at any time and we don't want to restrict them, then does that mean that the combat is the same difficulty in all of the locations, or do you want it to get harder over time? Like, if the game is linear, then you can have that it's easier at the start and it gets more difficult over time. But when the player can go anywhere, you either make it kind of the same difficulty everywhere and then there's no progression, or you make some areas sort of like harder areas, and then you're kind of restricting the player. And that was, we didn't really have a solution to that, and it wasn't really what we wanted to do anyway, so it was an easy decision to just say, okay, we're not going to do that.
And at the core of this game, I mean, it's the very relatable idea of leaving home, living in the comfort at home, and figuring out who you're gonna be as an adult. Where did that theme come from?
So I think we had to kind of piece it together. Well, so the very initial idea was just exploration and the world, and there being a believable world with people in it that you could go and meet and learn about. And so then we had to think about, okay, so then we needed a story framework that could support that could give the character a reason. Why is this character going into this world? What's she doing there? You know, when you show up and you meet these strangers and they have a quest for you, why are they just giving tasks to random people that they meet? So that was when we started to think, okay, so we need a reason inside the world why this character is just talking to lots of people and just doing jobs and challenges and that sort of stuff. So then we were thinking, okay, so then we can make that a kind of formal system in the world. Maybe this is something that is part of their culture, and it's something that, you know, if someone if a stranger appears from the desert and comes and greets you and you've never met them before, we wanted their culture to, they would support each other, or they would help them, or they'd have tasks for them. And so that was kind of how we ended up with okay, so then she's on this journey, and it's everyone in the world has been on this journey, so they all know the rules. So really it came from the gameplay. Like, we knew what we wanted the gameplay to be, and then this felt like a believable, relatable motivation for the character, and we thought it reflected the themes of just exploration and freedom and discovery that we wanted the gameplay to have.
It really feels though like there's a new generation of game developers now who've grown up with games and they bring something different to the table. I mean, they try to expand what games can be. Do you feel that's important to you guys as well, to introduce like new ways of thinking about games?
Yeah, I think so. I think games can be quite conservative in their mechanics, in that they fall back on tropes very often. I think a lot of it, also it just sci-fi in general, it has become very like Disneyfied, and yeah, we wanted to kind of overturn, I think people, they like cool spaceships and you know, it's like, oh, hoverbike, that looks like fun, like it looks cool, she's got this cool mask on, like it's just about the sort of visual spectacle, and we like that stuff too, but it's not enough, and I think we wanted to try and introduce a human element. We really wanted it to be about her and about her growth as a person, and like there is this cool sci-fi stuff, but it's also just about like, what do these people do every day, how do they raise their children, how do they earn a living.
And I think that's actually my favorite spot on the game is that thing about, like, I don't mind climbing and I don't have that kind of thing about noticing the glitches on climbing, for instance, but for me it's like when the writing started coming in and I would meet like certain characters that I haven't met before, and the exchanges would just be like so pleasant and so nice, and this whole thing where you read your Sable's thoughts and you read their thing, and they're also friendly and they're like, oh yeah, exactly, like I know the journey you're on, I wish you good luck, here's some tasks, you know, may you choose like an interesting path for you. And it's such a warm written game that's, I think in the months leading up to release, my favorite thing to do was just frequently going to a certain few characters like Laura or Elizabeth and just saying hi to them, even though like they would have the same thing, but it would just be like this perfect little break from actually working on the game to actually just having these little moments where I'm just enjoying the game. And that's definitely just like the world feels very alive whenever I talk to people in the game, and I still have that joy.
Yeah, we wanted, this was the game that we wanted to play ourselves, but we didn't really feel like it existed. We thought that there were parts of it that existed in other games, the freedom to explore, or even just, you know, good writing or cool visuals and stuff. But it's I definitely think that indie games have come a long way.
Oh yeah.
Even in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking about this even today.
Yeah.
Just like, if you think about games like Journey or something, which felt like real milestones at the time, even just in the past, you know, since then.
So much has changed.
Yeah.
Like it's so much have built upon that. And
yeah, exactly. And the bar just is being raised higher and higher in terms of just thinking about themes and ideas, and not just about gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Now the end game, if you can call it that, in Sable, is choosing a profession, choosing who you're gonna be and what you're gonna do. My favorite part, though, is I'm a huge science fiction nerd. I love science fiction stories, and just exploring, you know, the crashed starships, talking to the AI, figuring out who they were and where they came from. I'm not going to spoil that here, but it was such a big moment for me, and it became bigger because it was presented without, you know, a drama or fanfare. It was just there, like a fact of this world. Could you talk a bit about how you wrote the science fiction part of this story?
Yeah, so we had an outline of, we have a very rough timeline of how the world, like just the history of the world, and where did they come from, how did people get to this planet, why are there these ruins here, what happened to the spaceships, and we wanted to give enough hints that players who care about that stuff can find it out, but we thought it was really important that we don't just tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Because firstly, some players just don't care, and so for the people that don't really care about that stuff and they just want to explore it, or they're more interested in other parts of the game, we wanted to let them, we didn't want them to have to sit through loads of dialogue explaining the history, but then for the people that do care, we wanted them to feel like they had done the digging themselves, like they had, you know, that's what Sable is doing. She's learning about this stuff, but nobody's really giving her instructions. She's just working it out for herself. So we thought that by being hands-off we could help serve both of those kinds of players. Yeah, that was kind of the thought process behind it.
Yeah, I love that part. Moving back to the character of Sable, I find it interesting that quite a few games inspired by the Zelda games, at least in parts, choose to make the Link character female. And this request to have a playable Zelda or a female Link has been, around for 35 years. Were you at all influenced by this discourse while choosing who Sable was going to be?
Maybe unconsciously. Yeah, we just again, because we knew from the very start that we wanted the game to be about the character, and so who the character was really important to us. We wanted a character that had. We didn't want her to be limited by the world that she grew up in, or it was important to us that sort of women are equal in their society, and another part of that was the fact that they all wear masks means that they all have a kind of wall that they sort of protects them from other people. That everything is a little bit guarded. You have your own. There's kind of her voice in the dialogue, which you get because you're seeing her perspective, and so you can hear her thoughts. But she doesn't actually voice those thoughts very often. A lot of the time, she's kind of thinking about the world, but the way that the masks are a kind of shield, sort of protecting her from other people, and so. Yeah, we really wanted the masks came first. We kind of knew that we wanted them to wear masks before we had these ideas about society. It was kind of, okay, we're going to have masks, and that was about we need to create lots of characters, and we don't have time to model all of their faces and animate their faces. So if we just give them masks, it's quicker to create lots of characters. But then, yeah, that meant that we had to think really hard about, okay, so if this is a real world where people live. The fact that everybody wears masks is quite important. It's quite serious. It has quite big implications for how they think about themselves and how they represent themselves in the world to other people. And so, yeah, it was. I think that choice was as much about just coming up with a character. We wanted a character who was learning to live in that world, and she's learning about that world at the same time as the player, and there's things about it that you recognize from our world, and then there's things that are very different.
Yeah, these things matters though to people and players. There's this famous story which I really hope is true about this dad that hacks a Zelda game to make Link female for his daughter, who wanted that. I mean, these things matter, and I just find it interesting that you see this diversity now in characters. Is that important to you? That you get to include more kinds of people in roles in games?
Yeah, definitely. We wanted, again, because there's no danger in the game, you can't die. We wanted the game to feel welcoming, and like anybody can spend some time in this world and take something away from it. And we really wanted anybody to be able to have that experience, any player, to be able to have that feeling. So yeah, it was really important to us that there's a part of this game that anybody of any age, any gender, that they can all relate and they can feel like they have a place in that world too.
Mm-hmm. Now moving on to the visual style of the game, of course influenced by Mobius. Where did that come from?
That came pretty soon after the initial idea. We had the idea about the desert and watching the Star Wars trailer and stuff. That came first, but then very soon after that, we were starting to think, okay, so what would that look like? And it was an obvious choice because it's very striking, obviously. So, but also it's very simple. It's quite low detail. It means that producing the actual assets, doing the 3D models, all of that sort of stuff. It's a bit quicker, just because they're quite low detail. It's quite impressionistic. They don't need to look realistic, like the plants and the trees and stuff. If you look at them carefully, they don't really look like trees. And you can kind of tell that they're 3D models, but it doesn't really matter, because it's about just the impression of trees and life. And
but I really like that though, because I think with a lot of games it's sort of like the more high fidelity they are, and the more like HD, or I don't do graphics, so I wouldn't know the terminology here even, but like especially with first-person games where the camera is free, you can kind of go up to something that looks really good, and you get to this point where it just looks like grainy and kind of bad. And no matter like how good of a game it is, you will have this experience if you really look for it. And with Sable, it just kind of circumvents that, because it's just, it's a rough surface. It's gonna be rough, but it's not gonna be like really, 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 really grainy once you get like this close to it with your character. You don't even think about trying that. But so I think you kind of just dodge that whole thing, which for me is always a bit weird when it comes to games. Yeah,
definitely. And also just the desert is very lonely and kind of empty, and so the style, this very, very simplistic style, really complements that. It adds to the loneliness. It adds to the sort of sparseness of the desert. That there's very low detail. It's just sort of simple shapes, simple lines, and then also that means that when you see something in the distance, when you see the kind of silhouette of a spaceship or a ruin or something, it really stands out, because it's mostly very, very low detail, and then when there is a little bit of detail, your eye is really drawn to it. So it complemented the gameplay, I think.
And also the color palette in this game is remarkable. I mean, I've seen graphic designers discussing the color palette on Twitter, stating that, this is like a framework for a reference point for them as well. Could you talk a bit about how you worked on the color palette?
Yeah, that's mostly down to Greg. He did most of the color work. Well, he did all of the color work, really. It was about kind of coming up with a system for is about, because the colors are about mood and about tone and about setting the scene, but they're also about, they have practical reasons for, there's a practical sort of implication behind the choices. One of the big challenges with the art style is it's difficult to read depth. When everything is kind of flat colours, it's hard to tell when one object is in front of another object. And so having the colours, the sort of gradient that we have, where things that are further away from the camera, they're kind of tinted a slightly different colour. That was also just a sort of practical, we had a problem that we needed to solve, where we needed to kind of give the players a way to be able to judge depth, especially when they're doing platforming and they're jumping on stuff and they need to sort of judge how far away things are. So it was also a gameplay concern, as well as it wasn't just about the sort of visual spectacle.
It's kind of a funny thing, because I came kind of right off Manifold Garden, which is also like fairly similar with the style, flat surfaces. You see the contours, but not much texture. And actually, like that whole game kind of looks like bone white, but then you kind of, if you look for it, like there's distance stuff. There's like different kind of gravities, like it's slightly tinted, very elegantly to give you a lot of information. But when I think of that game initially, it's just actually bone white, but it's not. It's just the feeling of it, and this just kind of feels like Sable. It's actually kind of funny, because I was working on Manifold Garden when I had the first chat with you two, and I think you two both said that because of which helped a lot from Manifold Garden, is that because the texture is so like simple and flat, the audio has to be the texture. Like you have to feel like the grain and the surface so that you walk on. You have to hear that sound, because we can't show it visually. And I think that's a really very cool way that sound can kind of come in and help together with the visuals to kind of create this world. So it adds texture and depths to what the visuals aren't suitable for, right?
No, the color is very much is it's very impressionistic. It's not meant to be realistic. It's about also just sort of giving each of the areas, each of the biomes, giving them their own distinct feeling and mood.
Now, doing a review of Sable, there's one thing I found difficult, and that was to be like negative about the game. It felt sort of like kicking over a child's sandcastle at the beach or something, because the general feeling about the game is, the thing of beauty. How critical are you of your own game?
I see every single bug. I see every single flickering texture, every missing line, every frame drop.
I know.
I see all of it.
Yeah, I know there's some sounds that is like 200 milliseconds delayed for some reason that I've been looking into, and we might have fixed it, but sometimes it's not fixed, and it's every time I kind of hear or feel that maybe it's happening, it's just like, it sticks out very much to us because we know how it's supposed to be and why it's not that.
Yeah, no, we see all of these things, and it's a very, very big game, and it obviously still has bugs in it, but like, you should have seen what the game was like even just like 2 months before release. Like, we fixed so many bugs, and it's really just about, you just have to prioritize them. It's just
I even reported about a bug to Martin on Twitter. While playing it.
About the atomic heart one.
Yeah,
that was
that's
actually
fixed now. We fixed that.
Excellent.
That was the only major blocker that was found, so you found that.
Yeah,
cool.
That patch came out yesterday.
Oh, that's great. That's great. No, because when I came to that city, I was like, oh, there's a big cable here. Where does that go, you know? So, that's great. The thing about Sable that I find almost a bit funny is that, you can complete this game in like a couple of hours if you just go for a profession, get the 3 missions done, get the badges, turn it into a mask, and go home, Yeah. Do you expect to see speedruns of this game?
Oh, we've seen speedruns.
Oh, yeah?
I think the record is any percent. I think it's like 20 minutes ish.
All right.
They kind of skip the tutorial by glitching through the level geometry.
Of course.
So they can complete the tutorial in like 5 minutes,
right.
and then they glitch through a wall inside the whale ship, and they get a mask from that and stuff. So you can do it in about 20 minutes. And
all right.
we knew that was always going. That was on purpose from the very start. Because we knew that the structure was going to be very non-linear, and we didn't really know how much content there was going to be, because we had so many ideas, and less than half of them actually made it into the final game, and so we thought, okay, so if it's we want the player, but the other thing also is because we kind of made the game as a response to what open world games were like in 2017. We were getting kind of bored of them, and they were just the open world games were getting way too big, and there's loads and loads of stuff to do, and like Assassin's Creed takes about 100 hours to finish nowadays, and I've never finished one because they're so long. And you play it until you get bored, and then you just stop. And we really didn't like it. It's sad that pretty much everyone that plays those games, the last thing that they feel is boredom, and then they stop, and then you're kind of just left with this feeling of, it was good, but I kind of got bored of it. And we knew that it was going to be possible for players to get bored of our game, but we really wanted to make sure that when you start to feel that way, you can just finish it. And you can see the credits, and you can feel like you've actually completed it.
I love the fact, though, that after completing the game and getting the credits, you can just click continue. And you're back right before that final choice,
So that's how they do it in Breath of the Wild. And that was a pretty simple one for us to. We knew that if you want to go and just collect all the chums or something, then you should just be able to jump back in.
Yeah, I think I played it for like 6 or 7 hours after the credits. So that was great. So final question, I'm wondering, what's next now for Shedworks?
Well,
vacation.
Yeah, we're going to a cabin tomorrow. That's what's next.
But usually, when you're finishing off projects, sometime in the last couple of years, new ideas start to form, just like a part of the creative process.
There's a lot of ideas already existing. Like I have I have at least 5 things I've asked Daniel for, like at least once a year. Can we please have sandstorm?
Shush, Martin.
But
yeah, I mean we're still patching the game. We're fixing bugs, improving performance. We need to finish off the localization, get the couple of languages in the game because it's only in English at the moment. So we're finishing that off now. Yeah, we'll start to think about. I mean, we've obviously got plenty of ideas for what we could make next, but it's going to take a bit of time before we get to that point, I think. Yeah.
Well, good luck, and thank you so much for the experience. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us here.
Thank you.